At 5 a.m., 3 knocks shattered everything Lucas Reed thought he knew about boundaries. When a single father, living paycheck to paycheck, opens his door to find his CEO, mascara-streaked, trembling, whispering, "Can I come in?" he faces an impossible choice. Let her in and risk the careful life he's built for his daughter, or close the door on the only person who's ever looked at him like he mattered. What happens when power meets vulnerability? When the woman who signs your paycheck shows up broken at your doorstep, stay until the end. Hit that like button. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you what happened that morning. The alarm hadn't gone off yet. That was Lucas Reed's first thought when his eyes snapped open in the darkness of his Seattle apartment. For 3 seconds he lay perfectly still, his heartbeat the only sound in the room, wondering what had pulled him from sleep. Then he heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. 3 deliberate raps against his front door. Not aggressive, not timid, just purposeful. Lucas turned his head toward the digital clock on his nightstand. 5:03 a.m. The red numbers glowed like a warning. Nobody knocked on doors at 5:03 a.m. with good news. His first instinct was his daughter. He sat up quickly, the old springs in his second-hand mattress creaking in protest, and listened for any sound from Mia's room. Nothing. Just the gentle hum of her white noise machine filtering through the thin wall between them. She was still asleep. Safe. Knock, knock, knock. Whoever it was, they weren't giving up. Lucas swung his legs out of bed, his bare feet meeting the cold hardwood floor. He was wearing the same gray t-shirt and flannel pajama pants he'd worn to bed after finally getting Mia down at 9:30. There'd been tears over a scraped knee, then a request for 3 different bedtime stories, then a sudden urgent need for water, then one more hug. The usual negotiations of a 6-year-old testing boundaries. He loved every exhausting minute of it. Moving quietly through the dark apartment, Lucas grabbed his phone from the kitchen counter. No messages, no missed calls. The screen's glow illuminated the living room as he passed through it. A worn couch he'd gotten from Craigslist. Mia's art supplies still scattered across the coffee table from last night. Her pink backpack hanging by the door ready for school in a few hours. Everything in its place. Everything routine. Everything safe. That was how Lucas had built his life in the year since the divorce. Routine meant stability. Stability meant Mia didn't have to feel the ground shifting beneath her feet the way he had when his marriage fell apart. Knock, knock, knock. Coming, Lucas muttered, though he kept his voice low enough not to wake his daughter. He checked the peephole first, a habit born from too many true crime podcasts during late-night feedings when Mia was a baby. What he saw made absolutely no sense. Claire Vaughn stood in his hallway. Lucas blinked, stepped back, looked again. Still Claire Vaughn, the CEO of Innovative Solutions, the tech company where Lucas worked as a mid-level project coordinator, the woman whose signature was on his paychecks, the woman whose face appeared in Seattle Business Magazine and Bloomberg profiles, the woman who commanded conference rooms with the kind of authority that made seasoned investors straighten their ties. That Claire Vaughn was standing outside his apartment at 5 in the morning, except she looked nothing like the Claire Vaughn from the company website. Her dark hair, usually styled in a sleek bob that probably cost more than Lucas's monthly grocery budget, hung loose and disheveled around her face. The makeup she typically wore with precision, subtle but powerful, was smeared beneath her eyes. She wore a black dress that looked expensive but wrinkled, and she was holding her heels in one hand, standing in stockinged feet on the worn carpet of his apartment building's hallway. But it was her eyes that made Lucas unlock the door. He'd seen that look before, in his own mirror. On the worst nights after the divorce, when Mia was at her mother's place and the apartment felt too quiet and too loud at the same time. When the weight of single parenthood and loneliness and failure pressed down until breathing felt like work. Lucas opened the door. Claire Vaughn looked up at him, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Up close, he could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. There was a small run in her stockings. She smelled faintly of wine and expensive perfume. "Lucas," she said, and her voice cracked on his name. "Can I come in?" Every rational thought in his head screamed no. This was his boss. This was inappropriate. This was dangerous. This could cost him his job, his stability, everything he'd worked so hard to rebuild. But he'd seen that look in the mirror too many times to turn her away. "Yeah," he said, stepping aside. "Come in." Claire Vaughn walked into Lucas Reed's apartment like someone entering a life raft after hours in cold water, desperate, grateful, barely holding herself together. Lucas closed the door quietly behind her, hyper-aware of every sound. The lock clicking into place seemed too loud. His own breathing seemed too loud. Down the hall, Mia's white noise machine hummed on, oblivious. "I'm sorry," Claire said immediately, still standing in his small entryway, still holding her shoes. "I know I shouldn't have come here. I don't know why I came here." But Lucas had a feeling she did know, because he was the only person at Innovative Solutions who'd never treated her like a celebrity or a threat. He'd never angled for her attention at company events or acted intimidated during meetings. When she'd asked his opinion on project timelines, he'd given honest answers instead of what he thought she wanted to hear. He was just Lucas, a guy trying to do good work so he could pick up his daughter on time. "Do you want some coffee?" he asked, because he didn't know what else to offer. Claire let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "God, yes, please." Lucas moved to his small kitchen, grateful for something to do with his hands. The coffee maker was a cheap drip model that took forever, but it was reliable. Like everything else in his life now. Not fancy, but it worked. "You can sit," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the couch. "Just watch out for the Legos. Mia likes to build before bed." He saw Claire's eyes flick toward the hallway where the bedrooms were, a flash of panic crossing her face. "She's asleep," Lucas added quickly. "Deep sleeper. Won't wake up until 6:30 when her alarm goes off." Claire nodded and made her way carefully to the couch, stepping around the scattered art supplies. She set her expensive heels on the floor beside the coffee table, next to a plastic container of washable markers and a drawing of what appeared to be a purple dinosaur wearing a crown. The coffee maker gurgled to life. Lucas pulled 2 mismatched mugs from the cabinet, one with "World's Okayest Dad" that Mia had picked out for Father's Day, and a plain blue one he'd had since college. He gave Claire the plain one. They sat in silence while the coffee brewed, the only sound the machine's rhythmic dripping and the distant hum of early morning Seattle traffic beginning to wake up outside. Lucas's apartment was on the 4th floor of a building that had seen better decades, but it had good bones. And it was his. A place where Mia could have her own room, where they could build their own routines, where her mother's chaos couldn't reach them. When the coffee was ready, Lucas poured 2 cups and brought them to the couch. Claire accepted hers with both hands, wrapping her fingers around the ceramic like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "I had a date tonight," she said suddenly, staring into the coffee. "Last night, whatever time it is now." Lucas sat in the armchair across from her, maintaining distance, maintaining some boundary, however artificial. "Okay," he said quietly. He was nice at first, smart, successful, a venture capitalist. "We met at a fundraiser last month and he asked me to dinner." Claire took a sip of coffee, winced at the heat, continued anyway. "He spent the first hour telling me how impressive I was, how intimidating, how he'd followed my career, how he admired what I'd built." Lucas waited. He'd learned in the year since becoming a single father that sometimes people just needed space to say what they needed to say. "And then," Claire continued, her voice hardening slightly, "he spent the second hour explaining how I could be more approachable, how I came across as too intense, how maybe if I let other people lead sometimes, men wouldn't find me so threatening." She looked up at Lucas then, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "He actually used that word, threatening, like my existence was an act of aggression." "I paid for dinner," Claire cut him off. "I paid. I said thank you for a lovely evening. I got in my car, and I sat in the parking garage for 45 minutes crying because I knew he was right. Not about being approachable, fuck that, but about being threatening. I've built my entire life to be successful, to be powerful, to be someone who doesn't need anyone. And now I'm 42 years old and so good at not needing anyone that nobody wants to be around me." Lucas set his coffee down carefully on a coaster shaped like a cartoon frog, another one of Mia's picks. "I don't think that's true." You don't know me, Lucas. But she said it without heat, just tired resignation. I know you run a company with over 300 employees and you remember people's names, Lucas said. I know you stayed late last month to help the graphics team meet a deadline, even though you didn't have to. I know when Tom in accounting's wife had a baby, you sent flowers and gave him an extra week of leave. He paused. People who are actually threatening don't do those things. Claire stared at him for a long moment. How did you know about the flowers? Tom showed everyone the card. He was really touched. Something shifted in Claire's expression, a crack in the careful armor she wore even now, sitting in a stranger's living room at 5 in the morning. This wasn't the first time, she said quietly. The date. This keeps happening. Different men, same story. They like the idea of me until they actually have to deal with the reality of me. What's the reality of you? Lucas asked. That I care about my work, that I make more money than they do, that I'm not going to pretend to be less competent so they feel more important. Claire's hands tightened around the coffee mug. My ex-husband said I chose ambition over our marriage. Maybe he was right. Or maybe, Lucas said carefully, he chose his ego over your marriage. Claire's head snapped up. For a second, Lucas thought he'd gone too far, crossed some invisible line between boss and employee that couldn't be uncrossed. But then her face crumpled and she started crying, real crying, the kind that came from somewhere deep and long suppressed. Lucas didn't move at first, didn't rush to comfort her or tell her it would be okay or any of the empty platitudes people offered when they were uncomfortable with someone else's pain. He just sat there, present, while Claire Vaughn, CEO, Business Magazine cover star, woman who'd built a tech company from scratch, fell apart on his secondhand couch. I'm sorry, she gasped between sobs. God, I'm so sorry. This is so inappropriate. I shouldn't be here. You can be here, Lucas said simply. It's okay. Why? Claire looked at him with swollen eyes. Why did I come here? I have friends. I have a therapist. I have a penthouse apartment with a view of the Sound. Why did I drive to your apartment at 5 in the morning? Lucas thought about the answer for a moment. When he spoke, he kept his voice gentle but honest. Because I'm the only person at work who sees you as a person first. The words landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward in the silence that followed. Claire wiped at her face with the back of her hand, smearing what remained of her makeup. That's sad, isn't it? That I had to come to someone who barely knows me just to feel human. I don't think it's sad, Lucas said. I think it's honest, and scary as hell to admit. Are you always this direct? Only when someone shows up at my door looking like they need honesty more than comfort. Claire laughed, a real laugh this time, startled and genuine. God, no wonder you never climbed the corporate ladder. You're terrible at playing politics. I have a 6-year-old who negotiates bedtime like a hostage situation, Lucas said. I used up all my political skills there. The mention of Mia seemed to remind Claire of where she was, what she was doing. She straightened up slightly, some of that CEO composure trying to reassemble itself. I should go. You have to get her ready for school. You have work. I've taken up enough of your time. You haven't, Lucas said, but he didn't push. But yeah, I do need to start getting ready soon. Claire stood, and Lucas stood with her. She picked up her expensive shoes from beside the coffee table, held them in one hand like artifacts from someone else's life. As she walked to the door, she paused, turned back. Lucas, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you open the door? When you saw it was me, why didn't you just pretend you weren't home? Lucas thought about that question, really thought about it, about all the reasons he should have left the door closed, about professionalism and boundaries and the careful life he'd built, about protecting himself and his daughter from anything that might disrupt their hard-won stability. Because I recognize that look, he said finally, the one you had when I opened the door. I've worn it. When my marriage ended and I had to figure out how to be a single parent, and I felt like I was failing at everything. When I drop Mia at daycare and see other parents with their perfect families and wonder what was wrong with me that I couldn't hold mine together. When I felt like I was too much for some people and not enough for others, and there was nowhere in between where I actually fit. Claire's expression had gone very still. And now? Now I know that feeling passes. Not forever, but enough that you can keep going. And I know it helps to have one person who doesn't need you to be anything except honest about what you're going through. Lucas shrugged. I figured maybe you needed that tonight, this morning, whatever this is. For a moment, he thought Claire might start crying again. Instead, she did something unexpected. She smiled. A small, genuine smile that softened her whole face. Thank you, she said quietly, for opening the door. Any time, Lucas said, and meant it. Claire left without another word, slipping her shoes on in the hallway before walking toward the elevator. Lucas watched until she turned the corner, then closed and locked his door. The apartment felt different now. The air itself seemed charged with something he couldn't quite name. He looked at the couch where Claire had sat, at the coffee mug she'd used, at the Legos and art supplies and all the evidence of his small, simple life. What the hell had just happened? He didn't have time to process it. Down the hall, he heard the first stirrings of Mia waking up. A yawn, the creak of her bed, the soft pad of feet heading toward the bathroom. In 15 minutes, she'd emerge ready for breakfast and questions about what they were going to do today and whether she could wear her rainbow shirt even though it was dirty. Lucas returned the coffee mugs to the kitchen, rinsed them out, set them in the dish rack. By the time Mia appeared in her pajamas with her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, he had eggs scrambling on the stove and her favorite cartoon queued up on the tablet. Morning, Bug, he said, and she climbed onto her chair at their small table. Morning, Daddy. Did you sleep good? Yeah, Lucas said, which was technically true. He had slept well, right up until the knock on the door that had tilted his whole world sideways. Did you? I dreamed about dinosaurs, Mia announced. They were nice dinosaurs. They had a tea party. Sounds like a good dream. She nodded seriously and started eating her eggs when he put the plate in front of her. Lucas sat across from her with his own breakfast, watching his daughter, the best thing he'd ever done, the reason he got up every morning, the reason he'd learned to be brave even when he felt like hiding. His phone buzzed on the counter. A text from an unknown number. Thank you again. And please, what happened this morning stays between us. Lucas stared at the message. Then he typed back. Of course. You okay? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Getting there. See you at work Monday. Lucas deleted both messages, then sat back down across from his daughter. Daddy? Mia was looking at him curiously. You look funny. Funny how? Like when you're thinking really hard about something. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Just thinking about work stuff, he said, which was both true and wildly insufficient to describe what was actually happening in his head. Mia accepted this with a shrug and went back to her eggs. Lucas watched her eat, watched the morning sunlight start filtering through their east-facing window, watched their normal routine unfold exactly as it did every other morning. Except nothing felt normal anymore. Because somewhere in Seattle, Claire Vaughn was driving back to her penthouse apartment, and Lucas Reed was sitting at his kitchen table, and between them was something that hadn't existed 12 hours ago. He didn't have a name for it yet. Didn't know if it would matter come Monday morning when they were back in their respective roles, boss and employee, power and powerless. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He'd opened that door for a reason, and whatever happened next, whatever consequences came from showing Claire Vaughn that she could be vulnerable and still be safe, he wouldn't take it back. Some decisions you made with your head. Some you made with your gut. This one, Lucas had made with the part of himself that remembered what it felt like to be seen as human when everyone else only saw your failure. And he couldn't regret that. Not now. Not ever. So, the weekend passed in the usual blur of single-parent logistics. Saturday was grocery shopping and laundry and Mia's soccer practice where Lucas stood on the sidelines with other parents, making small talk about the weather and upcoming school events. Nobody asked about his personal life, and he didn't offer. That was the unspoken agreement of divorced parent gatherings. Everyone had their own complicated story, and nobody pushed. Sunday was meal prep for the week, and cleaning the bathroom, and 3 hours at the playground where Mia made friends with a kid named Jake, and they built an elaborate fortress out of wood chips. Lucas sat on a bench, half watching his daughter, half replaying Thursday night in his mind. He hadn't heard from Claire since that text message. Hadn't expected to. Whatever had happened in his apartment existed in some bubble outside normal reality, and Monday would either pop that bubble or prove it had substance. He wasn't sure which outcome scared him more. Sunday night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas did something he rarely allowed himself. He Googled Claire Vaughn. The search results were extensive. Her company, Innovative Solutions, had started as a small consulting firm 15 years ago and grown into a major player in tech infrastructure. Claire had a reputation for being brilliant and demanding in equal measure. She'd been featured in Forbes, Fortune, TechCrunch. There were interviews where she discussed her leadership philosophy, her approach to building company culture, her thoughts on women in tech. In every photo, she looked composed, powerful, in control. Nothing like the woman who'd cried on his couch at 5 a.m. Lucas closed the browser and went to bed, but sleep was slow in coming. His mind kept circling back to the same question. What did Claire Vaughn need from him that she couldn't get from anyone else in her life? The answer felt important, but he couldn't quite grasp it. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable rain, the kind of Seattle drizzle that made everything gray and slick. Lucas dropped Mia at school, kissed her forehead, reminded her that Grandma would pick her up today because he had a late meeting. "Love you, Bug." "Love you, Daddy." Then he was driving to work, his windshield wipers keeping rhythm with his nervous heartbeat. Innovative Solutions occupied 3 floors of a modern building in South Lake Union. Lucas parked in the garage, rode the elevator to the 7th floor, nodded to familiar faces as he made his way to his cubicle. Everything looked exactly as it had last Thursday. Same gray carpet, same ergonomic chairs, same buzz of conversation and clicking keyboards. Like the world hadn't shifted on its axis sometime around 5 a.m., 4 days ago. Lucas settled at his desk, logged into his computer, pulled up his email. 63 new messages since Friday. He started working through them methodically, falling into the comfortable rhythm of task management and project coordination. At 10:30, he had a team meeting in Conference Room B. He gathered his laptop and notebook, refilled his coffee, and headed down the hall. Claire was in the elevator when the doors opened. For a fraction of a second, they just looked at each other. She was back in her armor, sleek navy suit, hair styled perfectly, subtle makeup that somehow made her look both professional and striking. The CEO version of Claire Vaughn, the one from the website photos. "Lucas," she said evenly. "Good morning." "Morning," he replied, stepping into the elevator. 2 other people got in behind him, Jenny from marketing and someone from the legal department he'd seen around but never spoke to. The doors closed. They rode up in silence. Claire got off on the 9th floor, executive territory. She didn't look back. Lucas continued to 8, went to his meeting, participated in discussions about timeline adjustments and resource allocation. Normal work. Normal Monday. Except his phone buzzed halfway through the meeting with a calendar invitation. Brief check-in. Conference Room A, 2 p.m., Claire Vaughn. Just him, just her. Just a brief check-in that could mean absolutely anything. Lucas accepted the invitation and tried to focus on the rest of his meeting. At 1:58 p.m., Lucas stood outside Conference Room A on the 9th floor, wondering if he was about to be fired. It would make sense. Clean break. Remove the complication before it became a problem. He'd probably get a decent severance package. Claire wasn't cruel, just practical. And he'd find another job eventually. Seattle was full of tech companies. It would be fine. Except it wouldn't be fine because Mia's health insurance came through this job, and the rent was already tight, and starting over meant instability, and instability was the enemy of everything he'd worked to build. The door opened. Claire stood there looking every inch the CEO. "Come in," she said. The conference room was small, clearly designed for private conversations rather than large meetings. Windows overlooked the city, gray and wet under low clouds. Claire closed the door behind Lucas and gestured to one of the chairs around a small table. They sat across from each other. "I owe you an apology," Claire said without preamble. "What I did Thursday night was completely inappropriate. I put you in an impossible position, and I'm sorry." Lucas had prepared for a lot of possibilities, but not for this. "You don't need to apologize," he said carefully. "I do, though. You're an employee. I'm the CEO. I showed up at your home in the middle of the night without any warning and made you responsible for my emotional crisis." She looked directly at him, and her eyes were the same green-gray they'd been in his apartment, but steadier now. "That wasn't fair to you." I could have not answered the door. You shouldn't have had to make that choice. They sat in silence for a moment. Rain pattered against the windows. Somewhere down the hall, someone's phone was ringing. Is that all? Lucas finally asked. The check-in? Claire's expression shifted, just slightly, but enough for him to see the person beneath the CEO mask. No, she said quietly. I also wanted to say thank you. What you said about recognizing that look. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Nobody's seen that in me for a long time. Maybe ever. And you didn't have to be kind about it, but you were. You were in pain, Lucas said simply. I'm not going to be cruel to someone who's in pain. Most people would have at least been uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. I'm still uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean you didn't deserve help. Claire studied him with an intensity that made Lucas want to look away. He didn't. I meant what I said in the text, she continued. This stays between us. It can't... She stopped, started again. I can't have it affect your work or how people perceive you here. If anyone asks, we've never had a conversation outside of professional contexts. Okay, Lucas agreed. And if you ever feel uncomfortable because of what happened, if it affects your ability to work here, I'll write you a recommendation letter that'll get you a job anywhere in this city. I don't want to leave. But if you do, I won't. Lucas kept his voice steady. What happened Thursday was between two people having a hard time. That doesn't change anything about this. He gestured vaguely at the conference room, the company, the professional distance between them. Claire nodded slowly. Okay. Another silence. This one different, less tense, more uncertain, like they were both waiting for the other person to define what happened next. Can I ask you something? Lucas said. Of course. Are you okay? Really okay. Not just work okay. Claire's smile was small but genuine. I'm working on it. Therapy appointment scheduled, wine consumption reduced, boundaries with dating established, specifically not doing it for a while. Sounds healthy. Sounds lonely, she corrected, but probably necessary. She stood, signaling the meeting was ending. Thank you again, Lucas, for everything. Lucas stood too. They shook hands, formal, professional, exactly what you'd expect between an employee and CEO after a brief check-in. Except when their hands touched, something electric passed between them. Just for a second, just enough for both of them to feel it. Claire pulled her hand back first. I'll let you get back to work. Right. Yeah. Thanks for the... Lucas gestured vaguely at the room. Meeting. He left quickly, taking the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator, needing the physical activity to work off whatever energy was coursing through him. That evening, after picking up Mia from his mother's house and making dinner and supervising homework and doing the bedtime routine, Lucas sat in his living room with a beer he didn't really want. His phone buzzed. Unknown number again. I lied earlier. I'm not working on being okay. I'm working on pretending to be okay. There's a difference. C.V. Lucas stared at the message. Typed, deleted, typed again. Pretending is a start. Eventually it becomes real, trust me. 3 dots. Then, how long did it take you? After your divorce? Lucas thought about that question, about the first 6 months when he'd felt like he was drowning. About the slow, painful climb back to something resembling functionality. About the moment, maybe 9 months in, when he'd realized he'd gone a whole day without feeling like a failure. About a year. But I had Mia. She didn't give me a choice about falling apart completely. Lucky you. Lucas smiled at his phone and, yeah, lucky me. You'll get there too. How do you know? Because you're asking the question. That's half the battle. No response came. Lucas finished his beer, deleted the messages again, and went to bed. But as he lay in the darkness, listening to the rain against his window and the distant sound of Mia's white noise machine, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. He'd opened a door at 5 a.m. on Thursday, and he wasn't sure he'd ever really close it again. The text messages continued. Not every day, not even every week, but often enough that Lucas started recognizing the pattern. Claire would send something late at night, usually after 10, always after Mia was asleep. Never anything inappropriate. Just honest in a way that felt like she was talking to the only person who wouldn't judge her for it. Board meeting today. Spent 3 hours defending a decision I made 6 months ago that's already proven successful. Sometimes I think they just like watching me justify myself. CV Lucas would respond when he could, usually brief but genuine. Sounds exhausting. Did you win? Always. But I'm tired of winning feeling like survival. 2 weeks after their conference room meeting, Lucas was walking past Claire's office when he heard raised voices. Her door was partially open, and through the gap he could see her standing behind her desk, facing a man in an expensive suit he recognized as board member Richard Cortland. I'm not asking for your permission, Richard. I'm informing you of the decision. A decision that could cost us millions if it goes wrong. Or make us millions if it goes right, which is why I'm the CEO and you're the board member who shows up 4 times a year to question my judgment. Lucas kept walking, not his business, not his place to intervene. But that night, his phone buzzed. Do you ever feel like you have to be the smartest person in every room just to be taken seriously? CV number. But I'm not a woman running a tech company. I get to be mediocre without commentary. You're not mediocre. Lucas stared at that message for a long time before responding. How would you know? I read your project reports. You think 3 steps ahead. You anticipate problems before they happen. You're better at your job than you give yourself credit for. He saved that message. Didn't delete it like the others. Just saved it and read it again before going to sleep. The next morning, there was a company-wide email announcing a major acquisition. Innovative Solutions was buying a smaller competitor, expanding their market share significantly. The email was signed by Claire and included a detailed explanation of the strategic reasoning. Lucas read it twice, impressed by how she'd laid out the logic in terms even the non-business people could understand. This was what she did, saw opportunities others missed, had the courage to act on them, then defended her choices with data and vision. No wonder she was tired. No wonder she showed up at his door at 5 in the morning looking for someone who just let her be human. The acquisition news sent the office into controlled chaos. Meetings multiplied, deadlines compressed. Everyone suddenly had opinions about integration strategies and brand positioning. Lucas kept his head down and did his work. But he noticed things. The way Claire moved through the office with renewed energy, like the acquisition had given her something to fight for instead of against. The way she stopped in the break room to answer questions from nervous employees. The way she somehow remembered that Tom in accounting's baby had started sleeping through the night and asked him about it. She was good at this. Not just the business part, the people part too. 3 days after the acquisition announcement, Lucas got another calendar invitation. Acquisition Task Force meeting, Conference Room C. Friday, 3 p.m., 20 people were invited. Lucas was one of them. He showed up 5 minutes early with his laptop and a notebook, expecting to take notes and maybe contribute if asked. The room filled quickly, senior project managers, department heads, a few people from legal and finance. Claire arrived exactly at 3, carrying a tablet and wearing a gray suit that probably cost more than Lucas's car. She looked around the room, made eye contact with several people, including him, then launched directly into the agenda. We have 60 days to integrate Porter Tech's operations into ours. That's not a lot of time, which is why you're all here. You're the best at what you do, and I need that expertise to make this work. For the next 90 minutes, Claire facilitated a discussion that was equal parts strategic planning and problem-solving workshop. She asked pointed questions, challenged assumptions, and somehow made everyone feel like their input mattered while maintaining clear authority over the final decisions. Lucas found himself contributing more than he'd expected. When the conversation turned to timeline coordination across multiple departments, he suggested a framework he'd used on a smaller project. Claire listened, asked 2 clarifying questions, then adopted it on the spot. That's exactly what we need. Lucas, can you flesh that out into a full proposal by Monday? Sure, he said, trying to sound casual while internally panicking about the weekend he'd just lost. After the meeting ended and people filed out, Claire caught his eye. Just for a second. Just long enough for a small nod that might have meant thank you or might have meant something else entirely. That night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas worked on the proposal. His dining table became a workspace covered in printouts and sticky notes and half-drunk coffee cups. He built out the timeline framework, accounted for dependencies, identified potential bottlenecks, created contingency plans. It was good work. Better than good. The kind of work he used to do before the divorce, when he still believed he might climb the corporate ladder, before he'd recalibrated his ambitions around being present for his daughter. He sent the proposal to Claire at 11:30 p.m., then immediately regretted it. Too late. Made him look desperate or like he had no life outside work. His phone buzzed 30 seconds later. This is excellent. Exactly what I needed. Thank you. CV. No problem. Glad it works. Go to sleep, Lucas. You don't have to prove anything. He smiled at his phone in his empty apartment. Neither do you. The three dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response came. Easier said than done. Yeah, I know. Lucas did go to sleep after that, but not before reading through their message thread one more time, trying to understand what was happening between them. It felt like friendship, except friends didn't usually have this much power imbalance. It felt like something more than friendship, except they'd never crossed any line that would make it actually inappropriate. They existed in some undefined space between professional and personal, and Lucas had no idea if that was sustainable or dangerous or both. The acquisition task force met twice a week for the next month. Lucas found himself in more meetings than ever, contributing more ideas than ever, working longer hours than he had since Mia was born. His mother picked up his daughter from school 3 days a week now. The guilt gnawed at him, but Mia seemed happy enough with the arrangement, and the extra visibility at work meant a raise might be possible in the next review cycle. He needed that raise. Mia was outgrowing everything, and her birthday was coming up, and the car was making a noise that probably meant expensive repairs. During one task force meeting in mid-November, someone raised concerns about employee morale during the transition. Claire turned to Lucas. You're in the trenches with the mid-level staff more than most people in this room. What are you hearing? Every eye turned toward him. Lucas felt the weight of the moment, the chance to either build credibility or look like he was talking out of turn. Honestly, people are scared, he said. They're worried about redundancies, about whether their jobs are safe, about whether Porter Tech employees will get preferential treatment. The official messaging says nobody's getting laid off, but people don't always believe official messaging. One of the senior VPs started to object, but Claire held up a hand. He's right. We need to do better on internal communication. Tom, can you work with HR to schedule department-level town halls, give people a chance to ask questions directly? She looked back at Lucas. What else? Transparency about the integration timeline would help. Right now it feels like decisions are being made behind closed doors. Even just sharing the high-level roadmap would give people something concrete to hold on to. Claire nodded, making notes on her tablet. Done. Anything else? Celebrate the wins, even small ones. When a milestone gets hit, acknowledge it publicly. People need to feel like they're part of something successful, not just surviving a corporate merger. The meeting continued, but Lucas felt Claire's attention on him even when she was talking to other people. After everyone else had left, she stayed behind, reviewing something on her tablet while Lucas packed up his laptop. That was good feedback, she said without looking up. Thank you for being honest. That's what you asked for. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. I'm not most people. Claire finally looked up, and her expression was unreadable. No, you're not. The moment stretched between them, loaded with something neither of them was naming. Then Claire's phone rang, someone from the board based on her expression when she glanced at the screen. I have to take this, she said. Of course. Lucas left quickly, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. That evening, he picked up Mia from his mother's house. His mom looked tired, which made him feel guilty all over again. Long day? She asked. Yeah, sorry. This acquisition is eating up all my time. You're doing important work, honey. Mia and I are fine. His mother handed over his daughter's backpack. But you look exhausted. Are you taking care of yourself? I'm fine, Mom. You're allowed to have a life outside of work and parenting, you know. When's the last time you went on a date? Lucas thought about Claire sitting on his couch at 5 in the morning, about text messages at midnight, about the way she'd looked at him in the conference room an hour ago. Not really interested in dating right now, he said. His mother gave him a look that suggested she didn't believe him but wasn't going to push. If you say so. On the drive home, Mia chattered about her day, something about a science project and a boy named Marcus who ate glue and her friend Sophia's new backpack. Lucas made appropriate responses while his mind wandered back to work, to Claire, to the growing feeling that he was standing at the edge of something he didn't fully understand. His phone buzzed at a red light. He glanced at it quickly. Question: is it possible to be lonely in a room full of people? CV. The light turned green. Lucas drove, parked in his building's garage, got Mia upstairs, started making dinner. Only after she was eating her chicken nuggets and watching her show did he respond. Yes, especially when those people only see the version of you they need you to be. Exactly. Rough day, bored dinner. 4 hours of small talk and strategic positioning. I'm home now, staring at my view, wondering why I bought a penthouse when there's nobody here to share it with. Lucas hesitated, fingers hovering over his phone. This felt different from their other messages, more vulnerable. More like the woman who'd shown up at his door was breaking through the CEO armor again. For what it's worth, I think you're doing an incredible job with the acquisition. The staff town halls were a good call. People are already feeling better. How do you know? I listen. People talk to me because I'm not management. They trust me. I wish I had that. You have other things, like the ability to make decisions that actually change people's lives, like vision, like courage. Several minutes passed before her response came. I'm sitting on my balcony right now, looking at the city lights and thinking about how different my life looks from inside it versus outside it. From out there, I'm successful. From in here, I'm just tired. Lucas glanced toward Mia, still absorbed in her show. He moved to the kitchen where he could type without her seeing. Success and happiness aren't the same thing. You can have one without the other. Which do you have? Happiness. Mostly. On good days. What about bad days? On bad days, I remember that Mia deserves a parent who tries, so I keep trying. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. He almost left it there. Almost set the phone down and went back to normal evening routines. But something pushed him to add one more message. You don't have to be lonely, you know. You just have to let people see the real you. I did that once. Thursday morning, 5 a.m. Remember? I remember. And I haven't regretted it. Which scares me. Lucas stared at that message, his heart rate picking up. They were edging into territory they'd carefully avoided for weeks, acknowledging something beyond professional respect or casual friendship. Why does it scare you? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared multiple times. 5 minutes passed. Then, because you're the first person in years who I want to be honest with, and I'm your boss, and this can't go anywhere even if we wanted it to, and I don't know if you even want it to, and I'm typing too much and I should stop. Lucas read that message 3 times. His hands were shaking slightly. Daddy? Mia was looking at him from the couch. Are you okay? Yeah, Bug, I'm fine. Just work stuff. You look funny again. He set the phone down. Come on, let's get you ready for bed. The bedtime routine took an hour. Bath, pajamas, teeth, 3 stories, 2 glasses of water, 1 last hug. When Mia finally settled, Lucas sat on the edge of her bed in the soft glow of her nightlight. Daddy loves you very much, he said, brushing hair back from her forehead. I know, love you too. She yawned. Is work making you happy? The question caught him off guard. What makes you ask that? Grandma says you're working a lot, and you look tired, but also kind of smiley sometimes. Smart kid. Too smart. Work is busy right now, but yeah, I'm happy, especially when I'm with you. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Within minutes, she was asleep. Lucas returned to the living room and picked up his phone. He'd left Claire waiting for almost 90 minutes. Maybe she'd given up. Maybe she'd come to her senses and deleted everything. But there was one more message. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. Please forget I said anything. CV Lucas sat on his couch, the same couch where this had all started. He thought about what the safe response would be. The professional response. The response that maintained boundaries and protected both of them. Then he thought about Claire crying in his living room, about her admission that she felt threatening, about the weight of being the only person who'd seen her as human. He typed carefully. I don't want to forget you said it, but I also don't know what to do with it. You're right that this is complicated. You're right that I'm your employee. You're right that there are about 50 reasons why this, whatever this is a bad idea. He paused, then continued. But I also think about that morning more than I should, and I read your messages as soon as they come in. And I notice when you're in a meeting looking stressed because I've learned to recognize the small tells. And yeah, that scares me too. Send. No taking it back now. His phone rang immediately, Claire's name on the screen. Lucas answered. Hi. Hi. Her voice sounded different on the phone, softer, less certain. I needed to hear your voice, to make sure you're real and this is real, and I'm not just inventing something that isn't there. I'm real, this is real. What is this, Lucas? I don't know, but I don't think it's nothing. He heard her breathe out slowly. We can't, there are rules, power dynamics. I could lose my company, you could lose your job. I know. And you have Mia to think about, stability. Her needs come first. Always, Lucas agreed, which is why we don't do anything reckless, why we don't cross lines we can't uncross. Then what do we do? Lucas thought about it, about what he could offer that wouldn't compromise either of them, about what they both needed that existed in the space between professional and personal. We're honest with each other, he said finally. No games, no pretending. If something's happening here, we acknowledge it, and we figure out together if there's a way forward that doesn't hurt anyone. That sounds impossible. Maybe, but ignoring it hasn't made it go away. Claire laughed quietly. No, it really hasn't. A pause. I have a confession. Okay. I put you on the task force because you're good at your job, but I also did it because I wanted an excuse to see you more often, to work with you, to have legitimate reasons to talk to you. Lucas closed his eyes. I wondered about that. Is that awful? Did I abuse my position? I don't know. Did I work extra hard on that timeline proposal because I wanted to impress you, not just professionally? Did you? Yeah, I did. They sat in silence for a moment, the phone line humming between them. This is dangerous, Claire said softly. Probably. We should stop, right now, before it gets worse. We should. Neither of them hung up. Lucas? Yeah? Thank you for answering the door that morning, for treating me like a person, for being honest even when it would be easier to lie. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. I should let you go. You probably have a million things to do. Just dishes, they can wait. He could hear the smile in her voice. Good night, Lucas. Good night, Claire. After she hung up, Lucas sat in his quiet apartment for a long time. Outside, Seattle's rain had started again, gentle against the windows. Down the hall, Mia slept peacefully, unaware that her father's carefully ordered life was tilting sideways. He should be terrified, should be planning his exit strategy, should be protecting himself and his daughter from the fallout of whatever this was becoming. Instead, he felt more alive than he had in years. His phone buzzed one more time. We're going to have to be so careful. CV, I know. I don't want to hurt you, or Mia, or anyone. Then we'll be careful. We'll go slow. We'll do this right. Is there a right way to do this? Lucas thought about that question, about the impossibility of what they were considering, about all the ways it could go wrong. I don't know, but I'd rather try and fail than wonder what if. Me too. So what now? Now we sleep. And tomorrow we're professional, and we figure out the rest as we go. That's not much of a plan. It's all I've got. Then I guess we're improvising. Looks that way. One final message from Claire before the night ended. I'm glad you answered the door. Lucas smiled at his phone in the darkness. Me too. He deleted the messages, as always, but the feeling they left behind stayed with him through the night and into the morning. When Mia woke up asking about breakfast, when he dropped her at school, when he drove to work and parked and rode the elevator up to 7, the knowledge of what existed between him and Claire hummed beneath everything. They were standing at the edge of something neither could fully control. The smart thing would be to step back. The safe thing would be to maintain distance. But Lucas Reed had opened his door at 5 in the morning to a woman who needed to be seen as human, and that single decision had set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. All they could do now was hold on and hope they didn't crash. The next 6 weeks were an exercise in discipline and restraint that tested Lucas in ways he hadn't anticipated. At work, he and Claire were scrupulously professional. In meetings, she addressed him the same way she addressed everyone else. In the hallways, they exchanged polite nods and nothing more. To anyone watching, they were exactly what they were supposed to be, CEO and employee. Nothing unusual, nothing to question. But late at night, after Mia was asleep and the apartment was quiet, his phone would buzz with messages that made his heart race. They talked about everything. Claire told him about growing up as the only daughter of parents who expected perfection, about building her company from nothing while people told her she'd fail, about the loneliness of being the smartest person in most rooms, but never being able to show vulnerability without it being weaponized. Lucas told her about his marriage falling apart because his ex-wife wanted a different life than the one they'd built, about the terror of those first months as a single father when he didn't know if he was doing anything right, about loving his daughter so fiercely it sometimes scared him. They were careful, always careful, never meeting outside of work contexts, never touching beyond the occasional accidental brush of hands when reaching for the same document, never letting anyone see that something had shifted between them. But it had shifted, and Lucas felt it every single day. The acquisition was consuming the company. Porter Tech's integration was proving more complicated than anticipated, with technical challenges and cultural clashes that required constant attention. Claire was in the office 12 hours a day, sometimes more. Lucas saw the exhaustion creeping into her face during meetings, the way she rubbed her temples when she thought nobody was looking. During one particularly brutal task force session in early December, they were debating a technical integration issue that had no good solution. Tempers were running high. People were talking over each other. Claire was trying to moderate, but even her authority was being tested by the frustration in the room. Lucas had been quiet for most of the meeting, listening, processing. But when one of the senior engineers started dismissing concerns from the Porter Tech team, he spoke up. "That's not going to work," he said, cutting through the argument. "You're treating this like Porter Tech needs to conform to our systems, but their workflow actually has advantages we should be adopting. If we're too rigid, we'll lose the people who made Porter Tech valuable in the first place." The senior engineer bristled. "And who are you to make that assessment?" "Someone who's been coordinating between both teams for 6 weeks and actually listening to what people are saying instead of assuming we have all the answers." The room went silent. Lucas felt everyone's eyes on him, including Claire's. He'd just challenged a senior engineer in front of the CEO. It was either career suicide or the boldest thing he'd done in years. Claire leaned forward slightly. "Lucas, explain what you're proposing." So he did. He laid out a hybrid approach that incorporated the best of both systems, acknowledged the valid concerns on both sides, and provided a realistic timeline for implementation. He spoke for maybe 5 minutes, and when he finished, the room was still quiet. "That could work," the senior engineer admitted grudgingly. Claire nodded. "Then that's what we'll do. Lucas, can you draft a formal proposal by Friday?" "Yes." The meeting continued, but the dynamic had shifted. People started actually listening to each other instead of just defending their positions. By the time they wrapped up 90 minutes later, they had a clear path forward. As everyone filed out, Claire caught Lucas's eye and gave him the smallest nod. Just a fraction of acknowledgement that nobody else would notice. But he felt it like a touch. That night, his phone buzzed at 11:15. "You were brilliant today." "CV, just tired of people talking past each other. It was more than that. You saw a solution nobody else could see. And you had the courage to call out the senior engineer when he was being an ass. Might have been a stupid risk." It wasn't. It was leadership. Lucas stared at that word. Leadership. He'd never thought of himself that way. He was just a single dad doing his job, trying to keep his head above water. "I don't know about that." "I do. I've been watching you, Lucas, the way people come to you with problems, the way you listen before you speak, the way you find solutions that consider everyone involved. That's leadership, and it's rare." He didn't know how to respond to that, so he shifted the subject. "How are you holding up? You looked exhausted today." "I am exhausted. I'm in the office right now working on board reports that are due tomorrow morning." Lucas glanced at his watch. Past 11 on a Tuesday night, and she was still at work. "You should go home." "I will. Soon. Just need to finish this section." "Claire, go home." A long pause before her response came. "Why do you care?" The question felt like a test, like she was pushing to see how honest he'd be. Because I see you running yourself into the ground, and I wish I could help. Because you deserve to rest. Because someone needs to tell you that you don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. I wish that were true. It is true. You've already built something incredible. You've already proven yourself 100 times over. At some point, you have to believe that's enough. When did you get so wise? When my marriage fell apart, and I had to figure out what actually mattered. Turns out it's not impressing people or meeting impossible standards. It's being present for the people who need you and being honest about what you need too. And what do you need, Lucas? The question hung between them through the phone, loaded with meaning. Lucas sat on his couch in the darkness, choosing his words carefully. Right now? I need to know you're going to go home and get some sleep instead of working until 2 in the morning. That's what you need? That's part of it. What's the rest? Lucas closed his eyes, feeling the pull of honesty against the weight of wisdom. I need you to stop being so hard on yourself. I need you to know that the person you are when you're not being the CEO, the one who showed up at my door at 5 in the morning, that person is worth more than all the board reports and strategic plans in the world. I need you to believe you're enough exactly as you are. His phone stayed silent for so long he thought he'd gone too far. Then it rang. Hi, he answered. I packed up my laptop, Claire said without preamble. I'm in my car in the parking garage. I'm going home because you told me to, and I need you to know that nobody's done that in years, cared enough to tell me to stop working and take care of myself. Someone should have been doing it all along. Well, they weren't. It was just me, pushing harder, working longer, trying to be indispensable so nobody could question whether I deserved to be here. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you know how exhausting that is? No, but I can imagine. I'm so tired, Lucas. Not just physically. I'm tired of having to be invincible. I'm tired of people only seeing the success and not the cost. I'm tired of going home to an empty apartment and wondering if this is all there is. Lucas heard the pain beneath her words, the same pain that had driven her to his door weeks ago. Where are you right now? Exactly. Sitting in my car, still in the garage. Have you eaten dinner? A pause. No. There's a diner on Pike Street, Lou's. Do you know it? I think so. Meet me there in 20 minutes. I'll buy you a burger and terrible coffee, and you can tell me everything that's making you tired. Not as your employee, just as someone who gives a damn. Lucas, we agreed we'd be careful. We didn't agree to let you suffer alone. Kept his voice gentle but firm. 20 minutes, Pike Street. I'll be in the back booth. He hung up before she could argue, then immediately panicked about what he'd just done. This was crossing a line. This was exactly the kind of thing they'd promised to avoid. But the thought of Claire sitting alone in her car, exhausted and hurting, made the risk feel necessary. Lucas checked on Mia, still sleeping soundly, then texted his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd helped him out a few times before. She was a retired teacher who kept odd hours and had always told him to call if he needed anything. Emergency work thing. Can you listen for Mia for an hour? We'll pay you. The response came within seconds. Already in my pajamas, but sure. Leave your door unlocked. And you don't have to pay me, dear. Lucas left a note on the kitchen counter, just in case Mia woke up, grabbed his jacket, and drove to the diner. He was there in 15 minutes, slid into a back booth that was mostly hidden from the street, and ordered 2 coffees. Claire arrived exactly 20 minutes after his call, still wearing her work clothes but looking somehow smaller than she did in the office. She spotted him, hesitated for just a second, then walked to the booth and sat down across from him. This is a bad idea, she said. Probably. We shouldn't be here. And yet here we are. The waitress came by, an older woman named Dolores who'd been working at Lou's since before Lucas was born. She took their order without comment or curiosity, just efficient professionalism that suggested she'd seen every kind of late-night conversation this city had to offer. After she left, Claire wrapped her hands around her coffee mug the same way she had that first morning in his apartment. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted quietly. With the acquisition, with work, with this? Lucas gestured between them. All of it. Any of it. She looked up at him, and her eyes were tired in a way that went deeper than lost sleep. I built this company from nothing. I spent 15 years making it successful, And now I'm acquiring another company to make it bigger and more successful, and I don't even know why anymore. What's the point? So I can work harder? Make more money I don't have time to spend? Prove something to people whose opinions shouldn't matter? Then why are you doing it? Because it's what I do. It's who I am. If I'm not the successful CEO building an empire, then who am I? Lucas let that question sit between them for a moment. You're Claire, he said finally. The person who remembers people's names and sends flowers when they have babies and stays late to help teams meet deadlines. The person who showed up at my door at 5 in the morning because you needed someone to see you as human. That person exists whether or not you're acquiring companies. That person feels weak. That person feels real. There's a difference. Their food arrived. Burgers and fries that were probably terrible for them, but tasted like comfort. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. The diner's warmth and low lighting creating a bubble of privacy despite the other customers scattered around. Can I tell you something? Claire said eventually. Something I haven't told anyone? Of course. I'm thinking about stepping down. After the acquisition is complete and everything's integrated, just walking away from the CEO position. Lucas set down his burger. Are you serious? I don't know, maybe, probably not, but I think about it. She picked at her fries. I could stay on the board, consult, mentor the new leadership, but actually running the company day to day? I'm not sure I want that anymore. I'm not sure I ever really wanted it, or if I just wanted to prove I could do it. What would you do instead? I have no idea. That's the terrifying part. My entire adult life has been built around this company. If I'm not the CEO, I don't know who I am or what I want. She looked at him directly. Does that sound crazy? It sounds human and brave and scary as hell. I haven't made any decisions. I'm probably just tired and talking nonsense. Maybe. Or maybe you're finally being honest about what you actually need instead of what you think you should want. Claire smiled, but it was sad around the edges. When did you become my therapist? When you showed up at my door looking for honesty instead of comfort. I'm just returning the favor. They finished their meal talking about other things. Mia's upcoming birthday, the Seattle rain that never seemed to end, a movie Claire had seen that Lucas needed to watch. Normal conversation between two people who were becoming friends, except for the undercurrent of everything they weren't saying. When Dolores brought the check, Lucas grabbed it before Claire could. I invited you. I'm paying. Lucas, I make probably 10 times what you make. Don't care. My invitation, my treat. She didn't argue, just watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. They walked out to the parking lot together, and the cold December air hit them like a wake-up call. Thank you, Claire said, pulling her coat tighter. For calling me. For making me stop working. For listening. Anytime. I mean it. Thank you. She hesitated, then added, what we're doing right now, it feels dangerous. Because it is dangerous. We should stop. Before someone sees us. Before it becomes something we can't take back. We should, Lucas agreed. Neither of them moved. I need to tell you something, Claire said, her breath visible in the cold air. And I need you to be honest about how you respond. Lucas's heart rate picked up. Okay. That morning when I showed up at your door, I told myself it was because you were safe. Because you were the one person at work who wouldn't judge me or use my vulnerability against me. And that was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. She looked at him directly. No CEO mask, no armor. The whole truth is that I'd been noticing you for months. The way you listen when people talk. The way you handle stress without taking it out on others. The way you talk about your daughter with such obvious love. I was drawn to you long before that night, and showing up at your apartment wasn't random. I could have called a friend or my therapist or gone home and cried alone. But I came to you because somewhere in my exhausted, heartbroken brain, I wanted an excuse to let you see me. Lucas stood very still, processing what she'd just admitted. And now, Claire continued, I'm here in this parking lot at midnight on a Tuesday because you told me to come. And I came without even thinking about it, because when you're around, I feel like I can breathe. Like I don't have to perform or prove anything. Like I can just be Claire, and that's enough. She took a shaky breath. So I need you to tell me honestly, is this one-sided? Am I reading something into our conversations that isn't really there? Because if I am, I need to know now, before I do something stupid that ruins both of our lives. The question hung in the cold air between them, demanding truth. Lucas thought about lying, about protecting them both with a gentle deflection, about maintaining the careful distance they'd promised to keep. Instead, he told her the truth. "It's not one-sided," he said quietly. "I think about you constantly. I check my phone every 5 minutes hoping you've texted. I volunteer for extra work just to be in meetings with you. When you're stressed, I feel it. When you're happy, I feel that too. And yeah, that scares the hell out of me because you're my boss and I'm a single dad who can't afford to lose his job, and this could blow up in ways that hurt everyone involved, including my daughter." He paused. "But it's not one-sided, not even close." Claire's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "So what do we do? We're already doing it. We're being honest. We're acknowledging what's happening without pretending it's nothing." "That's not a plan, Lucas. That's just naming the problem." "I know, but it's all I've got right now." They stood in silence, the distance between them feeling both too far and dangerously close. "I should go," Claire said finally. "I should get in my car and drive home, and we should pretend this conversation never happened, and tomorrow we should be professional and distant and safe." "You should," Lucas agreed, "but I don't want to." "I know, I don't want you to either." Claire laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "This is impossible, you know that, right? There's no version of this that ends well. Maybe, or maybe we're just scared because neither of us has ever tried to do something this honest before. You're a romantic. Did anyone ever tell you that?" "My ex-wife, usually as an insult." "It's not an insult." Claire took a step closer, then stopped herself. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think before you answer." "Okay?" "If I wasn't your boss, if there was no power imbalance, no risk to your job, no complications, would you want this? Would you want me?" Lucas didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you're brilliant and brave and you care about people even when you pretend you don't. Because you build things that matter and you push yourself harder than anyone should have to. Because when you let your guard down, you're funny and vulnerable and real in ways that make my chest ache. Because my daughter is the most important thing in my life, and somehow I know you'd understand that instead of resenting it." He met her eyes. "Because I haven't felt this alive in years, and that's terrifying and exhilarating, and I don't want it to stop." Claire's breath caught. "Lucas, but you are my boss," he continued, "and there is a power imbalance, and I do have Mia to think about. So wanting you and doing something about wanting you are two very different things. What if the power imbalance didn't exist anymore?" "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that after the acquisition is finalized, after the integration is complete, I'm seriously considering stepping down as CEO, not because of you, or not only because of you, but because I'm realizing I built my entire life around being successful instead of being happy, and maybe it's time to change that." Lucas felt like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. "Claire, you can't make that decision because of this, because of us." "I'm not. I'm making it because I'm 42 years old, and I'm tired, and I want a life that includes more than work and loneliness. You're part of that realization, but you're not all of it. And if you step down, then I'm not your boss anymore. Then the power imbalance disappears. Then we could—" She stopped, seeming to realize what she was suggesting. "Then we could see if this is real or just two lonely people finding comfort in each other." "How long until the acquisition is finalized? 4 months? Maybe 5? That's a long time." "I know. A lot could change." "I know that too." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything she'd just said. "So what? We just wait? Keep texting late at night and pretending during the day and hoping nothing happens to screw this up? Unless you have a better idea." He didn't, and the frustration of that burned in his chest. "I need to get home," he said. "My neighbor's watching Mia, and it's late." "Of course." "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have kept you." "Claire." He waited until she looked at him. "I'm glad you told me. All of it. And I'm glad I told you the truth too. But we both need to think about what we're doing here. Really think about it. Because once we cross certain lines, we can't uncross them." "I know." Do you? Because I've already been through one divorce. I've already rebuilt my life from the ground up once. If this goes wrong, if we do this and it falls apart, I don't know if I can do that again, especially with Mia watching. Claire's face fell. I would never hurt Mia, or you, not intentionally. I know you wouldn't, but intentions don't always protect people from getting hurt. The words sat heavy between them. Lucas hated saying them, hated the look on Claire's face, but they needed to be said. You're right, she said quietly. We should think. We should be smart about this. Yeah. So we'll wait. We'll be professional. We'll see how things develop over the next few months. Okay? Neither of them moved. The parking lot was nearly empty now, just a few scattered cars and the distant sound of traffic. They stood 3 feet apart, close enough to touch, but miles away in every way that mattered. Good night, Lucas, Claire finally said. Good night. She walked to her car and he watched her go. She looked back once before getting in, and even from a distance he could see the conflict on her face, want and wisdom at war with each other. Lucas drove home in silence, his mind racing. Mrs. Chen was reading on his couch when he got there, Mia still sleeping soundly down the hall. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah. Work crisis. Thank you for coming over. Anytime, dear. You look stressed. Long day. She left with a knowing look that suggested she didn't quite believe him. Lucas locked the door behind her, checked on Mia one more time, then sat on his couch in the darkness. His phone buzzed. I'm home. Thank you for tonight. For everything. CV. You're welcome. I meant what I said about stepping down, about wanting a different life. I know. But you need to make that decision for yourself, not for us. What if it's both? Then you need to be sure, really sure. Because if you give up something that important and then we don't work out, you'll resent me forever. A long pause before her response. You're protecting me from myself. Someone has to. Most men would just take what I'm offering. I'm not most men. And you're not something to be taken. Another pause, longer this time. 4 months, Lucas. Can you wait 4 months? He thought about Mia sleeping in the next room, about his job and his stability and all the reasons this was complicated, about the way Claire had looked at him in that parking lot, vulnerable and hopeful and scared. I've waited 34 years to feel this way about someone. I can wait 4 more months. Promise? Promise. But Claire? Yeah? You have to promise me something too. Promise me you'll figure out what you really want, not what you think you should want, not what would be easiest or safest. What you actually want for your life. I want you. Beyond me. What do you want? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her final message came. I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. Good. Lucas deleted the messages, then sat in the quiet darkness of his apartment, feeling the weight of what they'd just committed to. 4 months of waiting. 4 months of being professional while something impossible pulled them together. 4 months of hoping nothing fell apart before they had a chance to see if this could actually work. It was the longest short-term plan he'd ever agreed to. But as he finally headed to bed, exhausted and uncertain and more hopeful than he'd been in years, Lucas realized something important. For the first time since his divorce, he wasn't just surviving. He wasn't just going through the motions of work and parenting and routine. He was actually living, actually feeling, actually believing that maybe his life could include something beyond stability and responsibility. And that scared him more than anything, but it also felt like the beginning of something that might actually be worth the risk. The 4 months stretched ahead of them like a test neither had studied for. Lucas threw himself into work with renewed focus, partly because the acquisition demanded it, and partly because staying busy kept him from overthinking every interaction with Claire. The task force meetings continued twice weekly, and he found himself speaking up more often, offering solutions that were increasingly adopted. People started coming to him directly with problems, bypassing their managers because they trusted his judgment. He was becoming exactly what Claire had called him that night, a leader. And it terrified him almost as much as it thrilled him. Mia's 7th birthday came in mid-December, and Lucas threw her a party at the apartment with 6 of her friends, pizza, and a homemade cake that leaned slightly to one side. She didn't care about the imperfections. She cared that her dad had made it himself, that her friends were there, that she got the art set she'd been asking for. Best birthday ever, she declared at bedtime, still wearing her party hat. I'm glad, Bug. Can I ask you something? Always. She picked at the edge of her blanket, suddenly serious. Are you happy, Daddy? It was the second time she'd asked him that question, and it hit him just as hard. Yeah, sweetheart, I'm happy. You seem different lately, like smiley more. Lucas kissed her forehead. That's because I have you, and because work's going well, and because life is good. It wasn't a lie. Not entirely. Life was good, just complicated in ways his 7-year-old didn't need to know about. After she fell asleep, Lucas checked his phone. Claire had texted earlier. Tell Mia happy birthday from me. 7 is a great age. TV. He'd never mentioned Mia's birthday to Claire, which meant she'd either looked it up in HR records or remembered from some passing comment months ago. Either way, it touched him more than it probably should. Thank you. She had a good day. Did you make the cake yourself? How did you know? Because you're the kind of father who makes birthday cakes himself, even though it would be easier to buy one. How did it turn out? Lopsided, but delicious. Perfect, then. Lucas smiled at his phone. They did this now, texted about small things, normal things, creating a relationship in the spaces between professional obligations. She'd send him articles she thought he'd find interesting. He'd recommend movies. They'd debate whether Seattle or Portland had better coffee shops. Surface-level conversations that felt intimate simply because they were choosing to have them. But they were careful. Always careful. No personal meetings outside of work. No phone calls unless absolutely necessary. No acknowledgement during office hours that they were anything other than CEO and employee. The restraint was exhausting. Christmas came and went quietly. Lucas and Mia spent it with his mother, who kept giving him speculative looks like she knew something was different but couldn't quite figure out what. Claire texted him on Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas. Hope you and Mia have a wonderful day. You too. What are you doing tomorrow? Board members' annual party, 4 hours of small talk and strategic networking. Sounds terrible. It is, but it's expected. You could skip it. I could, but I won't. Lucas thought about Claire spending Christmas at some obligatory corporate event, smiling and networking and performing the role everyone expected of her. It made his chest ache. You deserve better than that. Maybe. But better isn't always an option. He wanted to argue, to tell her she could choose differently, but he knew it wasn't that simple. So instead he sent, well, Mia and I will be building Legos and eating too much pie. I'll save you a mental slice. I'd rather have a real slice. Rain check for when things are different? Deal. The new year arrived with the kind of Seattle rain that made everything gray and introspective. The acquisition was entering its final phase. Technical integration mostly complete, cultural integration ongoing, timeline on track. Claire presented updates to the board with her usual precision, but Lucas could see the fatigue behind her professional mask. She was running on fumes and determination, and nobody seemed to notice except him. During a late January task force meeting, someone raised a concern about employee retention post-acquisition. Several Porter Tech employees had left for competitors, and morale was shaky. We need to address this now, Claire said, her voice sharp with stress. Lucas, you've been coordinating between teams. What are you hearing? Lucas had been expecting this question. He'd spent the last 2 weeks having quiet conversations with people from both companies, listening to their concerns, understanding what was really driving the dissatisfaction. Honestly, people don't feel valued. The Porter Tech employees feel like they were acquired to be absorbed, not integrated. They feel like their contributions are being dismissed and their expertise is being wasted. And our employees feel like they're being asked to do more work without additional support or recognition. He paused. Everyone's exhausted, underpaid for the extra hours they're working, and wondering if this acquisition was actually worth it. The room went quiet. Nobody contradicted him because everyone knew he was right. Claire's expression was carefully neutral. What would you suggest? Short term? Retention bonuses for key employees, public recognition of successful integration milestones, town halls where people can voice concerns directly to leadership without fear of retribution. Lucas met her eyes across the table. Long term? We need to rebuild trust, and that starts with leadership admitting we underestimated the human cost of this acquisition and committing to do better. One of the VPs shifted uncomfortably. That's a pretty aggressive assessment. It's an honest assessment, Lucas said evenly. You asked what I'm hearing, that's what I'm hearing. Claire was silent for a moment, and Lucas wondered if he'd crossed a line. Then she nodded. He's right. We've been so focused on the technical integration that we've neglected the people making it happen. That's on me. She looked around the table. Here's what we're going to do. Tom, work with HR on retention bonuses. I want a proposal by end of week. Sarah, schedule town halls for each department, and I'll personally meet with team leads from both companies to hear their concerns directly. The meeting continued, but Lucas felt Claire's attention on him even when she was talking to other people. After everyone else had left, she remained in the conference room, organizing papers that didn't need organizing. Lucas hesitated at the door. You okay? That was a hard conversation, but necessary. Thank you for being honest. That's what you pay me for. No, I pay you to coordinate projects. You're doing something much more valuable. She looked up at him. You're keeping me honest, reminding me that business decisions affect real people with real lives. That's worth more than you know. Lucas wanted to cross the room, to close the distance between them, to tell her she looked exhausted and beautiful, and he hated seeing her carry so much weight alone. Instead, he said, You're doing a good job. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Am I, or am I just good at pretending? Both can be true. Claire smiled, tired but genuine. How much longer? She didn't have to specify. He knew exactly what she was asking. 3 months. Maybe less if integration stays on track. That feels like forever. I know. They stood in silence, the conference room suddenly feeling too small and too empty at the same time. I should go, Lucas said, though he didn't move. You should, Claire agreed. He forced himself to walk away before he did something stupid. That night, after Mia was asleep, his phone rang. Claire's name on the screen. They'd maintained their rule about minimal phone calls, so seeing her calling made his heart race. What's wrong? He answered. Nothing's wrong, I just... She paused. I needed to hear your voice. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. Tell me something. Anything. Just talk to me. Lucas leaned back on his couch, phone pressed to his ear. Mia asked me today if I believed in magic. Completely random question while we were making dinner. What did you say? I said I believe in unexpected things that change your life in ways you didn't see coming. She said that wasn't the same thing. I said it kind of was. Claire's laugh was soft and warm. Smart kid. Too smart. She's going to figure out I have no idea what I'm doing any day now. You know exactly what you're doing. You're being a good father. That's harder than most people realize. How was your day? Lucas asked. Long. Frustrating. I had a board member question my judgment on the retention bonuses. Said we were rewarding people for doing their jobs. What did you tell him? That we were rewarding people for doing exceptional work under difficult circumstances. And if he couldn't see the difference, maybe he should spend a day actually talking to our employees instead of just reading reports about them. Lucas grinned. Bet that went over well. About as well as you'd expect. But I'm tired of people who've never built anything telling me how to run my company. She sighed. Sorry, I shouldn't be venting to you. Why not? You've listened to me plenty of times. Because you work for me. Because this blurs lines we're trying not to blur. Claire, we blurred those lines the second you showed up at my door at 5 a.m. We're just being careful about how blurred they get. Are we being careful? Or are we lying to ourselves about what's already happening? The question hung between them, dangerous and honest. Maybe both, Lucas admitted. This is harder than I thought it would be. The waiting, the pretending. I know. Do you think about it? About what happens after? All the time. What do you think about specifically? Lucas closed his eyes, letting himself be honest. I think about taking you to dinner at an actual restaurant instead of a diner at midnight. I think about you meeting Mia properly, not as my boss, but as someone I care about. I think about not having to delete our messages or measure every word we say to each other. He paused. I think about kissing you without worrying about who might see. Claire's breath caught audibly. Lucas, you asked what I think about. That's what I think about. I think about those things too, constantly, to the point where it's becoming a problem because I can't focus on anything else. How much longer can you stay on the phone? Lucas asked. As long as you want. I'm home. It's just me and the view and too much quiet. So they talked. For 2 hours, they talked about everything and nothing. Childhood memories and favorite books and places they wanted to travel and foods they hated and embarrassing stories that made them both laugh. They talked like people who were getting to know each other without the weight of job titles and power dynamics. Just Claire and Lucas figuring out if this thing between them was real or just loneliness masquerading as connection. By the time they finally said goodnight, Lucas was more certain than ever that it was real. But real didn't make it simple. February brought unexpected complications. The board announced they wanted to accelerate the final integration timeline, pushing everything that was planned for April into March. It meant longer hours, tighter deadlines, more stress for everyone. Claire looked increasingly worn down during meetings, her usual sharp focus occasionally slipping into distraction. Lucas worried, but there wasn't much he could do except his job and send supportive texts when he could. The night before a crucial board presentation, Claire texted him at 11:30. I'm going to mess this up tomorrow. I can feel it. You've never messed up a presentation in your life. There's always a first time. Not tomorrow. Tomorrow you're going to walk in there and remind them exactly why they made you CEO. How do you know? Because you're brilliant and prepared and you've literally built this company from nothing. One presentation isn't going to change that. What if they don't approve the final integration plan? Then you'll revise it and present again. But they will approve it. Because it's a good plan. A long pause before her response. Thank you for always knowing what to say. I just tell you the truth. That's easy. It's not easy. It's rare. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. Well, I'm not most people. No, you're really not. The presentation went perfectly. Claire sent him a brief message afterward, just a thumbs up emoji, but he could feel her relief through the phone. That weekend, Lucas took Mia to the Seattle Aquarium. She loved the jellyfish tanks, pressing her face against the glass to watch them drift through the water like underwater ghosts. While she was absorbed in watching a particularly large specimen, Lucas's phone buzzed. Where are you right now? CV Aquarium with Mia. Why? Just wondering. Wanted to picture it. Lucas looked around at the dim lighting, the families wandering between exhibits, his daughter's face illuminated by the tank's blue glow. Mia's mesmerized by jellyfish. I'm standing here realizing I've watched this same tank dozens of times and never really saw how beautiful it was. That's what kids do. Make you see things differently. Yeah. Is she excited about the jellyfish or scared? Both, I think. She keeps saying they're creepy but beautiful. Smart kid. Some things are both. Lucas knew they weren't just talking about jellyfish anymore. Yeah, some things are. Mia turned around then, tugging on his sleeve. Daddy, can we see the otters now? Sure, Bug. He typed one more message. Have to go. Otters are calling. Enjoy. And Lucas? Yeah. Thank you for sharing this, for letting me see little pieces of your life even when I can't be there. Anytime. He slipped his phone back in his pocket and followed Mia to the otter exhibit, but Claire's words stayed with him. She was living in the gaps of his life, collecting small moments like treasures, building a picture of who he was outside the office. And he realized he was doing the same thing with her, gathering the pieces she shared, the vulnerabilities and hopes and fears, assembling a version of Claire Vaughn that nobody else got to see. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with physical proximity. Maybe more intimate because of the distance they maintained. March arrived with unexpected sunshine, the kind of Pacific Northwest spring that felt like a promise. The acquisition integration was 90% complete. Final approvals were pending. The finish line was in sight. Claire announced in an all-staff meeting that the integration would be officially complete by March 31st. There would be a company-wide celebration, bonuses for everyone who'd worked on the project, and a return to normal schedules. Everyone cheered. Lucas watched Claire smile at the applause, saw the relief in her shoulders, and felt something shift in his chest. This was almost over. The waiting was almost done. After the meeting, as people filed out celebrating, Claire's assistant approached Lucas. Claire would like to see you in her office when you have a moment. Lucas's heart hammered. Sure. Now? Now would be good. He followed the assistant to the 9th floor, to Claire's corner office with its wall of windows overlooking the city. She was standing at those windows when he entered, her back to the door. Close it, please, she said without turning around. Lucas closed the door. They were alone, separated by her large desk and years of professional distance and about 15 feet of expensive carpet. You wanted to see me? Claire turned to face him. She looked different somehow, lighter, like a weight had lifted. The board approved everything this morning. The acquisition is official. Integration will be complete in 3 weeks. That's great. Congratulations. I told them I'm stepping down as CEO effective April 15th. The words hit Lucas like a physical force. You what? I'm stepping down. I'll stay on the board and consult during the transition, but I'm done being CEO. She moved closer to him, closing some of the distance. I told them I've built this company as far as I can take it, and now it needs fresh leadership to take it further. I told them I'm 42 years old, and I've spent 15 years building someone else's dream of what success looks like, and now I want to build my own life. Lucas couldn't breathe. Claire, I know what you're going to say, that I shouldn't do this for us, that I need to be sure, but I am sure. Not because of you, though you're part of it, but because I finally figured out what I actually want. She took another step closer. I want a life that includes more than board meetings and quarterly reports. I want to wake up looking forward to the day instead of dreading it. I want to be with someone who sees me as a person instead of a title. And yes, I want you. But more than that, I want to be someone worthy of you and Mia. You're already worthy? No, not like this. Not exhausted and burned out and running on empty, but I could be. If I step away from this and figure out who Claire Vaughn is when she's not the CEO. She was standing right in front of him now, close enough to touch. So that's what I'm doing. In 3 weeks, there will be no power imbalance, no professional conflict, just two people who've been waiting long enough to see if this thing between them is real. Lucas stared at her, his mind racing through everything this meant. What will you do? After you step down? I have some ideas, consulting, maybe teaching. There's a program that helps young entrepreneurs, especially women in tech, and they've been asking me to get involved. I have more money than I'll ever need, so it doesn't have to be about the paycheck. It can be about what actually matters. And if we don't work out, if you step down, and then we try this, and it falls apart? Claire met his eyes steadily. Then I'll still have made the right choice, because I can't keep living the way I've been living. I can't keep being invincible when I'm falling apart inside. Whether or not you and I work out, I need this change. You just helped me see that it was possible. Lucas wanted to kiss her, wanted to close the last few inches between them and show her exactly how he felt without words getting in the way. But they weren't there yet. 3 more weeks of being professional. 3 more weeks of restraint. Okay, he said. Okay? Okay. I'll wait 3 weeks. Okay, I believe you're making this choice for yourself. Okay. I'm terrified and hopeful, and I have no idea how to do any of this, but I'm willing to try. Claire's smile was radiant. That's all I needed to hear. Can I ask you something? Anything. That first morning when you showed up at my door, did you know? Did some part of you know this is where we'd end up? She considered the question carefully. No, I didn't know. I was just desperate and broken, and you were the only person I trusted to see that without judgment. But I think maybe I hoped. Somewhere deep down, I think I hoped there was something more than just a safe place to fall apart. There was. There is. I know. She stepped back, creating professional distance again, even though it clearly cost her. 3 weeks, Lucas, and then we can do this properly. What does properly look like? I ask you on a real date. You say yes. We figure out the rest as we go. I can work with that. Lucas left her office before he could do something that would ruin the careful timeline they'd created. He went back to his desk, tried to focus on work, failed completely. His phone buzzed. Thank you for waiting, for believing in this, for being you. CV, thank you for having the courage to choose differently. 3 weeks feels like forever. We've already waited 4 months. We can wait 3 more weeks. Can we? Lucas smiled at his phone. We have to. Because when this happens, I want to do it right. No sneaking around, no hiding, just honest and real in everything we've been building toward. Promise? Promise. The next 3 weeks were simultaneously the fastest and slowest of Lucas's life. Work consumed everyone as the final integration tasks were completed. Loose ends tied up, systems tested and verified. Claire was everywhere, in meetings, walking the floors, talking to employees, ensuring the transition happened smoothly. She was magnificent, and watching her lead through this final push made Lucas understand exactly why she'd built such a successful company. She was also counting down the days, same as him. Their text messages became daily rituals. Morning check-ins, evening debriefs, random thoughts throughout the day. They were building intimacy in the spaces between everything else, creating a relationship that existed independent of job titles and office politics. Lucas told Mia he might be going on a date soon. She was excited and asked 1,000 questions he couldn't fully answer. He told his mother the same thing, and she gave him a knowing look. It's someone from work, isn't it? Maybe. Be careful, honey. Office romances can get complicated. I know, Mom. We're being careful. She didn't push, but her concern was evident. April 14th arrived with spring rain and nervous energy. It was Claire's last day as CEO. There was a company-wide gathering in the main conference space, speeches and cake, and genuine affection from employees who'd worked under her leadership. Claire gave a brief talk about the company's future, thanked everyone for their dedication during the acquisition, and introduced her successor, the COO, who'd been with the company almost as long as she had. Lucas watched from the back of the room, proud and a little bit awed by how gracefully she was handling this transition. This was costing her something, he knew. Walking away from what she'd built required courage most people couldn't understand, but she was doing it anyway. After the celebration ended and people dispersed, Lucas found an envelope on his desk. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Meet me tomorrow at 7 p.m., Lou's Diner on Pike Street. I owe you a proper date. No more hiding, no more waiting, just us. Claire Lucas read the note 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in his wallet. Tomorrow. After months of texting and stolen moments and careful restraint, tomorrow they'd finally see if this thing between them could exist in the real world. He picked up Mia early from school, took her to the park, pushed her on the swings until his arms ached. She chattered about her day, oblivious to the fact that her father's entire world was shifting beneath his feet. That night, after she was asleep, Lucas stood in front of his closet trying to decide what you wore to a date with someone who'd seen you at your worst and was choosing you anyway. He settled on dark jeans and a button-down shirt that wasn't fancy but made him feel like a person who had his life together. His phone buzzed. Nervous? Terrified. You? Same. This is real now. Yeah. Lucas? Yeah? Thank you for opening the door that morning, for seeing me, for waiting, for being brave enough to try this. Thank you for choosing a different life, for trusting me with the truth, for being worth waiting for. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Lucas set his phone down and stood at his window, looking out at Seattle's lights scattered across the darkness. Somewhere out there, Claire was probably doing the same thing, standing at her penthouse windows, looking at the same city, feeling the same mixture of terror and hope. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, they'd find out if months of careful honesty could translate into something real and sustainable and worth the risk. Tomorrow, Lucas Reed would take Claire Vaughn on a date, and whatever happened after that, at least they'd know they'd been brave enough to try. He went to bed early, but sleep was impossible. His mind kept running through scenarios. Best case, worst case, everything in between. By the time morning came, he was exhausted and wired, running on coffee and adrenaline. The day crawled by with painful slowness. Lucas dropped Mia at his mother's house for the evening, ignoring her knowing looks and wishing him luck. He drove home, showered, changed clothes twice, and was still ready an hour early. At 6:45, he headed to Lou's Diner. At 6:55, he sat in the back booth where they'd met before, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and watched the door. At 7 exactly, Claire walked in. She wasn't wearing a power suit. She was wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, minimal makeup. She looked nervous and beautiful and real in a way that made Lucas's breath catch. Their eyes met across the diner. She smiled. And Lucas Reed realized that every single moment of waiting, every careful conversation, every night of restraint had been leading to this. She crossed the diner and slid into the booth across from him. "Hi," she said. "Hi. I'm not your boss anymore," I noticed. "So this is allowed now. This is okay." "Yeah, it's okay." Claire reached across the table and took his hand. Her skin was warm, her grip firm, and the simple contact felt electric. "I'm really glad you opened that door," she said quietly. Lucas squeezed her hand. "Me too." And just like that, after 4 months of waiting and hoping and being careful, they were finally here. Finally together. Finally able to see if the connection they'd built in text messages and stolen moments could survive in the real world. Finally brave enough to find out if they'd been worth waiting for all along. They sat holding hands across the table at Lou's Diner while Dolores refilled their coffee cups without comment, as if CEOs and project coordinators held hands in her establishment every day. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was loaded with months of words they'd held back, feelings they'd kept careful, a connection they'd built in the margins of professional distance. "I don't actually know how to do this," Claire admitted, her thumb tracing small circles on Lucas's palm. Dating, being vulnerable with someone who isn't a therapist or a late-night text message. Being just Claire instead of Claire Vaughn, former CEO. "I don't know how to do this either," Lucas said. "I haven't been on a first date in over a decade, and I've never dated someone who knows exactly how much I make or has read my performance reviews." Claire laughed, and the sound was different than he'd heard before. Lighter, more genuine. "That does give me an unfair advantage." "You already had an unfair advantage. You're brilliant and beautiful, and you showed up at my door at 5 in the morning looking like you needed someone to care. I didn't stand a chance." Her expression softened. "I did need someone to care. I needed you specifically, even if I didn't fully understand why at the time. And now? Now I understand perfectly. You're the first person in years who saw past the success to the actual human being underneath. You didn't want anything from me except honesty. Do you know how rare that is?" Lucas squeezed her hand. "I think I have some idea, yeah." They ordered food, the same burgers and fries from that first midnight meeting, and talked about everything they'd been saving up. Claire told him about her last day as CEO, how it felt both liberating and terrifying to walk away from the identity she'd built her entire adult life around. She'd already had 3 calls from companies wanting to hire her as a consultant, 2 speaking engagement requests, and an invitation to join a nonprofit board. "I said yes to the nonprofit," she said. "It's a mentorship program for young women in tech. Everything else I'm thinking about. I have time to be selective now. That's a luxury I haven't had in 15 years. How does it feel, having time? Honestly, weird. I keep checking my email expecting some crisis that needs my immediate attention, and there's just nothing. My calendar is empty. I can sleep past 6 in the morning if I want to." She paused. "I don't know what to do with myself." "You'll figure it out." "What if I don't? What if I've spent so long being CEO Claire that there's nothing else underneath?" Lucas looked at her steadily. "There's plenty underneath. I've seen it. The woman who sends birthday messages to employees' kids, who stays late to help struggling teams, who showed up at a stranger's apartment because she needed to be seen as human. That woman exists whether or not she has a job title. You have a lot of faith in me." "Yeah, I do." Claire's eyes were bright with emotion she wasn't trying to hide anymore. "I don't deserve you. That's not how this works. We're not about deserving. We're about choosing each other despite all the reasons we probably shouldn't. And do you? Choose me? I opened the door at 5 in the morning, didn't I? I've been choosing you every day since." They finished their meal in comfortable conversation, and when the check came, Claire grabbed it before Lucas could. "My invitation, my treat," she said, echoing his words from months ago. "You don't have to eat." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Let me do this." Lucas relented, watching her sign the check with a small smile. Outside, the April evening was cool and clear, Seattle's usual rain giving them a break. They walked slowly toward the parking lot, neither quite ready for the evening to end. "I should tell you something," Lucas said as they reached Claire's car. Mia knows I'm on a date tonight. I didn't tell her who with, but she knows it's someone from work. And she's excited, which means she's going to have 1,000 questions tomorrow. Claire stopped walking. Are you worried about that? About how she'll react when she finds out it's me? A little. She's 7. She doesn't really understand workplace dynamics or why we had to wait. She just knows her dad is happy lately, and she's perceptive enough to have noticed the change. When do you want to tell her? Not yet. We should figure out if this actually works first. If we can make it past a few dates without realizing we're better as midnight text messages than actual people spending time together. Claire stepped closer to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that he'd only noticed before in passing. Lucas, do you really think we won't work? I think we have a lot to figure out. You're adjusting to a completely new life. I'm navigating single parenthood. We've built this whole relationship in secret, and now we have to see if it holds up in the real world where people will have opinions and complications exist, and it's not just late-night confessions and careful restraint. That sounds like you're expecting us to fail. That sounds like me being realistic about the challenges ahead. I want this to work, Claire, but wanting it isn't enough. We have to actually do the work. She studied his face in the parking lot's harsh fluorescent lighting. You're protecting yourself, and probably protecting me too. Someone has to be practical. What if I don't want practical right now? What if I want to be optimistic and hopeful and believe that we didn't wait 4 months just to fall apart? Lucas reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the first time he'd allowed himself to touch her beyond holding hands. She leaned into the contact slightly, her eyes closing for just a second. I am hopeful, he said quietly. I'm also scared. Both can be true. What are you scared of specifically? That I'm not enough. That a single dad with a modest apartment and a 7-year-old daughter can't fit into your world. That eventually you'll realize you gave up being a CEO for someone who can't match your ambition or your lifestyle or your expectations. Claire's eyes opened, and they were fierce. Stop doing that. You're not just anything, Lucas. You're a father who makes lopsided birthday cakes and remembers what people say and leads teams without needing a title. You're the person who saw me at my absolute worst and chose kindness over judgment. That's not enough. That's everything. You say that now as I say that because it's true, and because I've spent my entire life around people who thought success meant money and power and impressive titles, and all it got me was lonely and exhausted and crying in my car at midnight. She took both his hands in hers. You showed me there was a different way to measure a life, by the people who love you, by the kindness you show, by the courage it takes to be honest when lying would be easier. That's the world I want to fit into, yours. Lucas felt something break open in his chest, some defensive wall he'd been maintaining without realizing it. I'm falling in love with you, he said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. I know it's too soon and we've only been on one date and there are still so many things we need to figure out. But I'm falling in love with you, and it scares me because I don't know how to protect Mia from the fallout if this doesn't work. Claire's breath caught. Lucas, I needed you to know, before we go any further, before I let myself fall completely. You need to know what you're getting into. It's not just me. It's me and Mia, and she comes first, always, no matter what. I know that. I've always known that. And you're okay with it? I'm more than okay with it. Watching you be a father, hearing you talk about her, seeing how much you love her, that's part of what made me fall for you. Claire's voice was shaking slightly. Because I'm falling too, Lucas. I've been falling since you opened that door and treated me like a person instead of a title. And yes, it's terrifying, and yes, there are complications. But I don't want to protect myself from this anymore. I don't want to be careful and restrained and practical. I want to see where this goes. Even knowing it might not work? Even knowing it might not work. Because the alternative is wondering what if for the rest of my life, and I'm done with regrets. Lucas pulled her closer until there was barely any space between them. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Please, Claire whispered. He kissed her in the parking lot of Lou's Diner under harsh fluorescent lights with the smell of grease and coffee in the air. And it was perfect precisely because it was imperfect. Her lips were soft. Her hands came up to frame his face, and for a moment the entire complicated world fell away until there was just this. Two people who'd been brave enough to be honest, finally allowing themselves to feel everything they'd been holding back. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Claire was smiling. "That was worth waiting for," she said. "Yeah, it really was." They stood there for another few minutes, neither wanting to leave, until Lucas finally forced himself to step back. "I need to pick up Mia from my mom's, and you probably need to process the fact that you just kissed your former employee in a diner parking lot." Claire laughed. "When you put it that way, it sounds scandalous, isn't it? Maybe a little, but I don't care. Do you?" "Not even a little bit." They made plans for a second date, dinner at an actual restaurant, something nicer than Lou's, but not so fancy Lucas would feel out of place. Saturday night, 3 days away. Lucas drove to his mother's house feeling like he was floating. When he walked in, Mia ran to him immediately, her face bright with curiosity. "How was your date, Daddy? Was she nice? Do you like her? Are you going to see her again?" "Bug, slow down, one question at a time." His mother was watching from the kitchen with barely concealed amusement. "She's been like this for the last hour. I couldn't get her to focus on anything else." Lucas sat down on the couch and pulled Mia onto his lap. "Yes, she's very nice. Yes, I like her. And yes, I'm going to see her again." "What's her name?" "Claire." "Is she pretty?" "Very pretty, and smart, and kind." "Does she like kids?" Lucas paused, realizing this was the question that actually mattered. "I think so, but we're taking things slow, okay? I'm just getting to know her right now." Mia seemed satisfied with that answer. She chattered a bit more about what she and Grandma had done, a movie, popcorn, stories, then started yawning. Lucas thanked his mother, bundled his daughter into the car, and drove home through Seattle's quiet streets. After Mia was asleep, his phone buzzed. "I can't stop smiling. CV. "Me either. My face hurts. Is Mia suspicious?" She asked 1,000 questions, but I kept it vague. Told her your name, but nothing else. "Are you going to tell her? Eventually?" "Yeah, but I want to be sure first. Want to know this is real and sustainable before I introduce that complication into her life?" "That's fair. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to really understand that Mia's stability comes first. If at any point this starts to affect her negatively, I have to prioritize her." "Lucas, I would never ask you to do anything else. She's your daughter. She should come first." "Thank you for getting that. Thank you for trusting me enough to try this despite the risks." Lucas lay in bed staring at his phone, feeling the weight of what they'd started. 3 days until their next date. 3 days to process the fact that this was really happening. 3 days to figure out how to navigate a relationship with someone who used to sign his paychecks. Saturday arrived faster than expected. Lucas spent Friday night overthinking his wardrobe, finally settling on dark slacks and a button-down that Mia declared made him look fancy. She was spending the night at a friend's house, a sleepover that had been planned weeks ago, which meant Lucas had the entire evening free. He picked Claire up at her penthouse, which was simultaneously impressive and intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, modern furniture that probably cost more than his car, art on the walls that looked museum quality. This was her world, and Lucas felt distinctly out of place in it. Claire must have sensed his discomfort because she immediately grabbed her jacket and keys. "Let's get out of here," she said. "This place is beautiful, but it doesn't feel like home. Too big, too quiet, too much like a showroom." "Are you going to stay here, now that you're not CEO?" "I don't know. Maybe find something smaller, more comfortable, less about impressing people and more about actually living." They went to a small Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles and pasta that tasted like someone's grandmother made it. No one recognized Claire. No one paid them any special attention. They were just two people on a date, and it was exactly what both of them needed. Over wine and pasta, they talked about harder things. Claire asked about Lucas's divorce, and he told her the truth, that his ex-wife had wanted a bigger life than he could provide, wanted adventure and excitement instead of domestic stability, wanted to be free from the responsibilities of marriage and motherhood in ways she hadn't anticipated when they'd gotten married young. She's not a bad person, Lucas said. We just wanted different things, and once Mia was born, those differences became impossible to ignore. She sees Mia every other weekend, pays her child support, but she's made it clear she doesn't want to be a full-time parent. So that's me. Does that make you angry? Sometimes. Mostly it just makes me sad for Mia. Every kid deserves parents who choose them fully, but I can't control what her mother does. I can only control how I show up for my daughter. Claire reached across the table and took his hand. You show up beautifully. Lucas told her about the early days of single parenthood, the panic and exhaustion, the fear that he was screwing everything up, the slow realization that love and consistency mattered more than perfection. Claire listened without judgment, asking questions that showed she was genuinely trying to understand his life. Then Lucas asked Claire about her marriage, and she told him about a man who'd loved her ambition until it overshadowed his own, who'd asked her to choose between her career and their relationship, who'd resented her success while simultaneously benefiting from it. He wanted me to be successful enough to be impressive, but not so successful that it made him feel small, Claire said. That's an impossible balance. I tried for years to be both ambitious and accommodating, and I failed at both. When we divorced, he told me I'd chosen my company over him. Maybe he was right, or maybe I just chose honesty over pretending I was someone I wasn't. Do you regret it? The divorce? No. I regret the time I wasted trying to be smaller so he could feel bigger, but I don't regret leaving. They finished dinner and walked through Capitol Hill's streets, past bookstores and coffee shops, and people living their lives without corporate pressure or impossible expectations. Claire linked her arm through Lucas's, and he felt the rightness of it, how natural it felt to walk beside her, to match his pace to hers, to exist in the same physical space after months of careful distance. Can I tell you something? Claire said as they passed a vintage record store with glowing windows. Always. I'm terrified. Of all of this. Of not knowing who I am without my job. Of disappointing you. Of not being enough for someone like you. Lucas stopped walking and turned to face her. Someone like me? Someone good. Someone who knows what matters. Someone who has his priorities straight in a way I'm still figuring out. Claire, you think you're not enough? You're the most capable person I've ever met. You built a company from nothing. You led hundreds of people through a complicated acquisition. You had the courage to walk away when you realized it wasn't making you happy. That's not enough. That's extraordinary. Capable and good aren't the same thing. You're both. I've seen it. The way you care about people even when you're under pressure. The way you remember details about their lives. The way you're choosing to mentor young women in tech instead of chasing your next big achievement. That's goodness, Claire. That's who you are when you strip away the job title. She leaned into him, her forehead resting against his chest. How do you always know what to say? I don't. I'm just honest about what I see. They stood like that for a moment, in the middle of the sidewalk with people walking past them, just holding each other. Then Claire pulled back and looked up at him. I want to meet Mia, she said. Not right away, not tomorrow, but soon. I want to know the most important person in your life. Lucas's heart stuttered. That's a big step. I know, but I'm not interested in a relationship that exists separately from your daughter. If we're doing this, if we're really trying, then I need to be part of your whole life, not just the parts that are convenient. What if she doesn't like you? Then we figure it out. Together. But Lucas, I'm not going to compete with your daughter for your attention or resent the time you spend with her. I'm going to respect that she comes first and find a way to fit into both your lives. That's what adults do when they care about each other. You're serious about this. Completely. Are you? Lucas thought about Mia's question. Does she like kids? He thought about introducing Claire into his daughter's life, about the risk and the reward, about the possibility that this could actually work. Yeah, he said finally. I'm serious about this too. They planned it carefully. 3 weeks later, after several more dates and countless conversations about expectations and boundaries and what Mia needed to know, Lucas told his daughter that Claire was coming over for lunch. The Claire from your dates? Mia asked, bouncing with excitement. Yeah, Bug. The Claire from my dates. She wants to meet you. Does she know I like dinosaurs and art, and that I'm the best reader in my class? I told her all of that. Is she going to be my new mom? Lucas knelt down to Mia's eye level. No, sweetheart, you have a mom. Claire is just someone I care about who I want you to meet. We're going to have lunch together and see if everyone gets along, that's all. Nothing's changing unless everyone's happy about it. Mia seemed to process this. Okay, can I show her my dinosaur collection? If she's interested, absolutely. Claire arrived at noon on a Saturday carrying flowers for their table and a children's book about paleontology for Mia. She was nervous. Lucas could see it in the way she smoothed her casual dress, the way her smile was a bit too bright. Hi, she said when he opened the door. These are for you. Well, for the apartment. I didn't know what to bring. They're perfect. Come in. Mia was hovering by the couch, suddenly shy despite her earlier excitement. Lucas made introductions, watching carefully as his daughter and the woman he was falling in love with met for the first time. Mia, this is Claire. Claire, this is my daughter Mia. Hi, Mia, Claire said, kneeling down to the girl's height instead of towering over her. Your dad told me you're an amazing artist and that you know a lot about dinosaurs. Mia's shyness melted slightly. I know all the dinosaurs, even the ones nobody else knows about. That's impressive. I definitely don't know all the dinosaurs. Maybe you could teach me some. Really? Really. I brought you a book about dinosaur fossils. Have you read it before? Mia took the book carefully, examining the cover with serious concentration. No, but I like it, thank you. Lunch was pizza, simple, child-friendly, low stakes. They ate at Lucas's small dining table, and Claire asked Mia questions about school and friends and her favorite dinosaur, actually listening to the answers instead of just making polite conversation. Mia warmed up quickly, chattering about her second-grade teacher and the science project she was working on, and how her friend Sophia had a pet hamster. After lunch, Mia showed Claire her dinosaur collection with the kind of enthusiasm she usually reserved for grandma visits. Claire listened to explanations about each dinosaur, asked genuine questions, and never once seemed bored or condescending. Lucas watched from the kitchen while he cleaned up, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. This could work. Against all odds, and despite all the complications, this could actually work. Later, after Mia had gotten absorbed in building a Lego castle and Claire joined Lucas in the kitchen, she spoke quietly. She's wonderful, smart, and creative, and she has your eyes. She likes you, I can tell. How can you tell? Because she showed you her dinosaur collection. She only does that for people she trusts. Claire leaned against the counter. This is harder than board meetings, more intimidating than investor presentations. Because if I mess this up, it's not just my life I'm affecting. You're not messing anything up. You're being yourself. That's all I asked for. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, the three of them watching a movie Mia picked, making popcorn, existing in the same space without pressure or performance. It felt normal in the best possible way. When Claire left that evening, Mia hugged her goodbye. Just a quick, impulsive hug that made Claire's eyes go bright with emotion. She's nice, Daddy, Mia said after Claire was gone. Can she come back? Would you like that? Yeah, she didn't talk to me like a baby, and she really listened about dinosaurs. Plus, she's pretty, and she makes you smile a lot. Lucas pulled his daughter into a hug. I'm glad you like her, Bug. That night, after Mia was asleep, his phone rang. Thank you, Claire said when he answered, for trusting me with her, for letting me into that part of your life. Thank you for being genuinely interested in getting to know her, for asking real questions and caring about the answers. She's amazing, Lucas. You're doing an incredible job. We got lucky today. Not every day is this smooth. I don't expect smooth, I expect real, and today felt real. They talked for another hour about small things, how Mia's favorite dinosaur was the Ankylosaurus, how Claire had been nervous all morning, how Lucas had almost called off the lunch 3 times before she arrived. They talked like people who were building something together, piece by piece, with honesty and patience and the kind of care that came from knowing what was at stake. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Claire came over for dinner once a week, sometimes helping Mia with homework, sometimes just being present while Lucas cooked and Mia chattered about her day. They went on dates when Mia was at her mother's or grandmother's, dinners and movies and long walks along the waterfront. They texted constantly, but now the messages were signed with I love you instead of initials. Claire started consulting work with 3 companies, all flexible arrangements that let her control her schedule. She joined the nonprofit board for the Women's Tech Mentorship Program and threw herself into making a difference for young entrepreneurs. She sold her penthouse and bought a smaller condo in Ballard. Still nice, but more homey, with a guest room she said was for when she had visitors. Or for when Mia wants to have sleepovers, she added, and Lucas had to sit down because the implication of that statement hit him hard. 3 months after their first date, Claire spent a Saturday helping Mia build a volcano for her science project. They made a mess of Lucas's kitchen with paper mache and paint, and when the volcano finally erupted with baking soda lava, both Claire and Mia cheered like they'd discovered actual science. Lucas watched them from the doorway, covered in newspaper and paint, laughing together, and realized something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't his life and Claire's life existing separately. This was their life, building together, messy and imperfect and real. That night, after Mia was asleep and Claire was about to leave, Lucas stopped her at the door. "Stay," he said. "Lucas, not like that. Just stay. Have coffee on the couch, watch a movie. Be here without it being a scheduled visit or a planned event. Just be here because you want to be." Claire's smile was soft. "I always want to be here." So she stayed. They watched a movie neither of them paid attention to, talked about nothing important, existed in the comfortable silence of people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. At some point, Claire fell asleep against his shoulder, and Lucas just held her, feeling the weight and warmth of her, thinking about how far they'd come from that morning at 5 a.m. when she'd knocked on his door. Around midnight, Claire stirred and stretched. "I should go home," she said sleepily. "You could stay in the guest room. It's late and you're tired." She looked at him carefully. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Mia's seen you here plenty of times. It's not weird." So Claire stayed, sleeping in Lucas's guest room, and in the morning she was there when Mia woke up. They made pancakes together. All 3 of them crowded into the small kitchen, arguing about the correct pancake to chocolate chip ratio, laughing when they burned the first batch. It felt like family. 2 weeks later, Lucas was picking Mia up from school when his phone rang. Claire's name on the screen. "Hey," he answered. "What's up?" "The board called. They want me to come back as CEO. The new guy isn't working out and they think the company needs me." Lucas's heart sank. "What did you tell them?" "I told them no, without hesitation, without even thinking about it. Just no." "Really?" "Really. Because I've spent the last 6 months building a life I actually want to live. I'm mentoring young women who remind me why I fell in love with tech in the first place. I'm consulting on my own terms. I'm sleeping past 6 a.m. and having dinner with you and Mia and not checking my email every 5 minutes. Her voice was firm, certain. "I'm happy, Lucas. Actually happy. And no amount of money or prestige is worth giving that up. I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For knowing what you want, for choosing it, for being brave enough to walk away from what everyone else thinks you should want. I learned that from you. From watching you choose Mia over career advancement, from seeing you build a life based on what matters instead of what impresses people." Lucas pulled into his parking spot, but stayed in the car for another minute. "I love you," he said. "I know I've said it before, but I need you to know I mean it, completely. Not just the parts of you that are easy or convenient, all of you. I love you too, all of you. The single dad with the lopsided cakes and the modest apartment, and the daughter who knows more about dinosaurs than most paleontologists. You're exactly what I need." That evening, with Mia watching a movie in the living room, Lucas and Claire sat at his kitchen table drinking tea and talking about the future. Real future. Not hypothetical possibilities, but actual plans. "I want this to work long term," Claire said. "Not just dating, not just casual. I want to build a life with you and Mia, if you're open to that." Lucas took a breath. "I'm open to that, but we need to be smart about it. Mia's doing well right now, and I don't want to disrupt her stability. We move at her pace, not ours." "Agreed. What does that look like practically?" "We keep doing what we're doing. Dinner once or twice a week, dates when we can, building trust and routine. Eventually, maybe you spend more nights here. Eventually, maybe we talk about you moving in or us finding a place together. But we let Mia adjust to each step before we take the next one." "What if I want to marry you someday? Is that something you'd consider?" Lucas looked at this woman who'd shown up at his door broken and vulnerable, who'd had the courage to walk away from everything she'd built to find happiness, who'd genuinely fallen in love with his daughter and his messy, complicated life. "Yeah," he said, "that's something I'd consider. Someday, when we're both ready." Claire reached across the table and took both his hands. "I'm ready now, but I'm also patient. We have time. We do have time, and I want to do this right. For Mia. For us. For the life we're building." 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in October, Lucas woke up to find Claire already in his kitchen making pancakes with Mia. They were arguing about whether dinosaurs would have liked pancakes, both of them laughing, flour somehow already everywhere. "Morning, Daddy," Mia said when she spotted him. "Claire says dinosaurs probably didn't eat pancakes, but I think they would have if they'd tried them." "I think you're both right," Lucas said diplomatically. Claire smiled at him over Mia's head, a smile full of love and contentment, and the kind of peace that came from knowing you were exactly where you were supposed to be. Later that day, after breakfast and after Mia had gone to a friend's birthday party, Lucas and Claire walked along the waterfront. The Seattle sky was clear for once, the Olympics visible across the Sound, the city spread out behind them. "I need to ask you something," Lucas said, his heart pounding. "Okay." "We've been together almost a year now. You've become part of Mia's life and mine in ways I couldn't have imagined that morning you showed up at my door. And I know we said we'd take things slow, but..." "Lucas?" Claire stopped walking and turned to face him. "Are you about to ask me what I think you're about to ask me?" "That depends. What do you think I'm about to ask?" She was smiling, tears already forming in her eyes. "I think you're about to ask me to marry you." Lucas pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. It wasn't an expensive ring. He couldn't afford the kind of jewelry someone like Claire probably expected. But it was beautiful in its simplicity, a single stone in a silver band that had taken him months to save for. "I'm asking," he said, opening the box. "I'm asking if you'll marry me. If you'll build a life with me and Mia. If you'll be brave enough to choose this messy, imperfect, wonderful life we're creating together." Claire was crying now, not bothering to wipe the tears away. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her there on the waterfront with the whole city watching, and it was perfect precisely because it was real. That evening they told Mia together. Lucas had been nervous about how she'd react, but she just threw her arms around both of them and said, "Does this mean Claire gets to stay forever?" "If that's okay with you," Claire said, "it's really okay with me. Can I be in the wedding?" "You're going to be the most important person in the wedding," Lucas assured her. They got married 4 months later in a small ceremony at a venue overlooking the Sound. Mia was the flower girl wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself. Lucas's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Claire's former employees filled half the seats, there to celebrate the woman who'd led them well and had the courage to choose happiness. When Lucas said his vows, he spoke directly to Claire. "You showed up at my door at 5 in the morning looking for someone to see you as human instead of a title. I opened that door not knowing it would change my entire life. You've taught me that success isn't about money or power or impressive careers. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better, who sees you completely and loves you anyway, who chooses you every single day. You've chosen me and Mia, and that's the greatest gift I've ever received. I promise to keep opening doors for you, to keep seeing you, to keep choosing you for the rest of my life." Claire's vows were just as honest. "I spent 15 years building an empire because I thought that's what success looked like. Then I met a single dad who made lopsided birthday cakes and treated me with kindness when I showed up broken at his apartment. You showed me that real success is measured in love and honesty and the courage to be vulnerable. You and Mia have given me a life I didn't know I needed, but can't imagine living without. I promise to be patient with Mia's pace, to support your dreams, to keep choosing honesty over performance, to build a life with you based on what matters instead of what impresses people." They kissed as husband and wife, and Mia cheered louder than anyone. The reception was small and joyful. Good food, better company, dancing that lasted until the venue staff started giving them pointed looks. Lucas danced with Mia, with his mother, with his new wife. Claire danced with former colleagues who told her she'd never looked happier. As the evening wound down and guests started leaving, Lucas and Claire stood together watching the sun set over the water. Mia was asleep in a chair, worn out from dancing and cake. "We did it," Claire said, leaning into him. "We actually did it." "Did you doubt we would?" "Sometimes. In the beginning, when it seemed impossible. And now? Now I know that the best things in life are the ones you have to be brave enough to reach for. You taught me that." Lucas kissed her temple. "We taught each other." They stood there watching the light fade from the sky, their daughter sleeping nearby, their future stretching ahead of them, full of possibility and promise, and the kind of love that was built on honesty instead of performance. It had started with 3 knocks at 5 in the morning, a CEO looking for humanity, a single dad choosing kindness, a risk neither of them was sure would pay off, but it had paid off in ways neither could have imagined. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is open a door when someone knocks, and sometimes the person on the other side changes everything. Lucas Reed had opened his door to Claire Vaughn at 5 in the morning, and she'd walked into his life and never left. They'd built something real from midnight confessions and careful honesty, from patience and courage and the willingness to choose each other despite every complication. And now, standing together as husband and wife with their daughter sleeping nearby and the whole future ahead of them, Lucas knew with absolute certainty that he'd make the same choice again. He'd always open the door, because some people are worth the risk. And Claire Vaughn, brilliant, vulnerable, brave Claire who'd chosen happiness over power, was worth everything.